Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it's January 27th of 2023, and it is 7:11 p.m. here in Fort Worth. Um, my, my son had his billfold stolen, and he doesn't have an ID, and they also, he also had in his bank card. So I have been going through, in order to get a ID, he's going to have a birth certificate. Uh, well, you can't. I went through a whole bunch of that top thing, and then there was some underneath it. I have a stack of certificates, birth certificates for myself, uh, my mother and father, their mother and father, um, marriage certificates, baptismal certificates, oh, everything. The one certificate that I can't find is for my son, who needs it in order to get another state ID. And now it may still turn up, but I went through things. You just won't believe it. Take my word for it. I went through. Well, I have to take an Naproxen. My arthritis is killing me from bending over and doing everything. It it used to be much easier, unfortunately, uh, before the 9/11 incident. It used to be very easy to get a birth certificate or whatever you need, whatever kind of certificate that you needed. It was very easy, too easy. What was it, 17 uh, terrorists came over for the 19, or was it 16? They came over for the 9/11 from, all but one came from Saudi Arabia. And then we went to war with Iraq, who had nothing to do with it. But I think every one of those who came over easily acquired a birth certificate, a driver's license, everything that they needed. It was super easy. So the federal government, and well, some states immediately started making changes, but the federal government passed some regulations that uh, what you had to go through in order to get and they made it much tougher uh, to get a driver's license or a birth certificate. And there's, and still there is a ton of places. If you do a search, there are tons of places that tell you, you can get a birth certificate. But it's not the birth certificate. It's a photocopy of it that they have taken out, easily taken out of the things. But it's not the certified thing. It has to come from a certain department or whatever. And so you have to watch out for that. Now, when I am 81. When I had a birth certificate for as long as when I was, my parents had it. And then when I, went to work and everything, when I needed it, I had my birth, I got the birth certificate from them, I guess, and used it all across, the United States for various jobs. And never a problem. then after, 9/11, when 9/11 happened, I ended up um, coming to Texas. I'd been to Texas before and then back to Florida. Well, Missouri, from Missouri. Anyway, you get the idea. So, and I went to work for a security company because after 9/11, I'm sure it varied depending on what was available across the United States. And the airports for Dallas, Fort Worth, they used off-duty police officers, or maybe off-duty police officers who were airport police. And that's what, but they decided it was too much money and stuff like that. So they wanted security, contract security. So and then so the security company advertised, and I had just come to Texas, and I went to work at Love Field. Two of us on duty at a time, one inside the tower and then one at the gate, and we switched every 2 hours. And then later on, I moved to, I think we all moved to Addison Field. Anyway, so what happened after that? Well, something happened that I needed. Okay, I guess I moved from Florida, and I had a Florida driver's license, so I needed to get a Texas. Well, I didn't have a car or a driver's or a whatever, so I needed, a state ID, which is a driver's license, except it's not that part, keep certified. So I went, and this is the birth certificate that I had forever, and went in, and I thought I'll be in and out of here, and I was in and out real quick. The person said, that's not the that's not the birth certificate that you need. And I said, I've used that, for, I don't forget, I don't know how long, 50 years or something, different places, different things. And I said, that's, he said, no. He said, let me show you. And then real small print. You could see down at the bottom that the hospital gave this to the parents. And it was an identical 100%, but it was not issued, it was like, I guess they printed it, I don't know. It was not approved. So I had to get from, Missouri. Oh, and that's the problem here in the United States. Everything is money. If you do a search for driver's licenses or for birth certificates or whatever, well, not a driver's license, but birth certificate and whatever you need, the web is filled. Oh, and very few of those, that what they have is, they'll get it to you quickly. And what it is just, they've gone in and photographed, paid money, I guess, to do it. They've gone in and photographed all the things, and they can give you, it looks exactly, it is an exact copy, but it's not certified by whichever agency in that state takes care of that, so. And, well, like my birth certificate that it wasn't a real birth certificate, it was the thing that my parents got that looked 100%. They, I guess, had that printed out or had a deal with but it wasn't, the certified, thing or whatever. So I'm exhausted. I've been going, and I'll have to go through this stuff again, but it's just so, oh my God, I've got birth certificates, death certificates, confirmations, and plus a lot of other stuff that, is not in the same category, but my mother, when she was in grade school, when she moved from the first half of the schooling to the second half. I'm not talking about grade school or high school. I'm talking about they made a little thing, you know. And then, of course, I've got her paperwork that when she graduated from nursing school with her grade, you know, with how much she did really well. Had a high 97 and type of stuff. I was kind of surprised. But I got all this stuff, and the one thing I need right now is my son's birth certificate, and I got to get that. I'm still looking. I've got to believe that it's here. In here, in this priority envelope, doesn't look like but there is a whole bunch of stuff. What that is, when I was in grade school, I didn't really know he was St. Vincent's grade school. When I graduated, another boy in the class, he also graduated, of course, and we both applied at De La Salle Military Academy, and we both got accepted, so we both went together. So then we knew each other, you know. And what he wanted to do was go into the Marine Corps, because his father was in the Marine Corps. And I wanted to go, of course, I wanted to go in the Army. I had an older cousin. I think that's why, you know, he'd come back from basic training and then back for his military police training, and then that type of stuff. And he'd come back he went to Germany, but it was after the war, and then he ended up going to Korea when it was the same thing after the Korean War, and that type. And he'd come back and he'd bring little, you know, stuff, some coins from Korea or stuff for me. He was, I don't know how many years older. He was older than I was. And I think that's probably the reason I wanted to go in the Army. Well, anyway, my friend Fred that graduated with me, like I said, he wanted to go into the Marine Corps. And so we both went into the, you know, De La Salle Military Academy. After 3 years, his parents moved, and he had to move, so he left De La Salle. And I wish that naproxen would kick in for the pain. After 3 years, his parents moved, so he had to leave. And he loved De La Salle. He loved that whole thing, everything about it. And he has fond memories of, you know. And I went to De La Salle, and I didn't. I wasn't. It was just I wanted to be in the Army. Turns out I was 40 pounds on a minimum weight requirement, and they wouldn't take me. And what I totally forgot about was in the first grade of school, my hearing went really bad, and my parents never did anything about it. I'm not blaming them. When I got, you know, when I graduated from high school, and I went to real estate school, and I graduated from that. Then I went to welding school. But, you know, when I was working and had a union job and was making good money, I haven't done anything about my hearing. I've never had my hearing checked. But it's bad, believe me. So, I mean, I was doomed not to get into, you know, the military. And anyway, my friend Fred graduated. You know, when he moved to another place, he couldn't get into the De La Salle Military Academy there or something. I think the classes were full or something, you know, and he'd have been going in as a senior or something, so it just didn't work out. But he went in the Marine Corps. He got out of the Marine Corps. He went to, college, and he got himself a PhD, and then he continued to work for the government, not in the military, but, well, let's see, what would it be? His degree was, well, what he did is, well, like at the big military base here in Texas, very large. So what would it be, archaeology, or I forget what his degree is in. But he spent the rest of his life until he retired from that type of stuff. Like here in Texas, he was surveying and doing whatever those people do, finding where the Indian tribes had had their camps and where this and that and all that kind of stuff to make sure that the military did not do anything to disrupt those ancient sites and things like that. And I guess unless they which they wouldn't have had, unless they positively had to, which they could work around it, had a big base and stuff. So he did that, but he loved De La Salle, everything about it, the religion, the Christian brothers, and that type of stuff. And so in the past, I've sent him some stuff. I mean, we lost contact for a while. And then we reconnected. And so then I sent him some stuff when there was I didn't find out right away. That there was an alumni association, all that type of stuff. So when I started getting the newsletters and that kind of stuff, I tried to copy on my copy machine. I don't think it was very good quality, whatever. So finally, I rounded up a bunch. I won't send this until I do make sure I go through these other things to see if there's any more information. And then I'm going to send that to him, and he will appreciate it a great deal. And so Trump had his bone spurs that kept him out of the Vietnam War, and I had being underweight and had severe. I actually found out from a site, I never can remember the name of it, where people ask questions and people answer them, and it's really well done. And I've spent too much time. I just go to check it a little bit, and then I'm there for hours reading things or whatever. Found out a bunch of stuff. One thing I found out was that because of the Vietnam War, they needed in the Army people so bad that if you were really underweight, they would take you anyway. And they would make sure you put weight on in the basic training. And if you were a fat recruit, they would make sure that you lost. And they talked about, how it was done. I forget now, but, I think usually maybe you get 25 minutes for eating. And I think what they do is make it, you got 20 minutes for eating. If you were underweight, if you were underweight and you got like 20 minutes to eat your food, all of your food, everything you took. If you were underweight, they would give you an extra 5 minutes or something. And if you were in, basic training, while you were there, you weren't going to get a ding dong or a Hostess cupcake or a piece of pie or something like that. But if you were in the group that was underweight, they would give you a piece of pie or something. I forget exactly how it worked. And of course, if you were fat, then they'd do it. You'd probably only get 15. I don't know the exact numbers. You'd only get 15 minutes to eat, and no chocolate pie. So I was surprised about that. By the way, right after high school, when I applied to get in, I went down, and then they were asking me all these questions and that stuff, and had to take a little test. Nothing real big, And they asked me about, have you ever had such and such and such? I said, the only thing wrong with me, I'm just a little bit underweight. And these guys, the recruiter says, yeah, you do look. How much do you weigh? And I told him. And he said, you're 40 pounds under he had to look it up, but you're 40 pounds under the minimum weight requirement. We can't take you. So then I was surprised to hear that later on, except my hearing would have still kept me out. I totally forgot about the hearing situation, although I suffered from it You know, like when the Casio watches came out that had the alarms and all that type of stuff, and you could take your pulse and all that kind of stuff. I couldn't hear it, and I could never hear. Even if I was on an elevator and the alarm would go off, I could not hear it. And other, other problems like that. So anyway, I got, at a certain, 2 or 3 years later, at a certain age, you got called down for the Selective Service to do a, physical exam on you. And they, well, there was 200 of us naked. And I think I told this story a couple of days ago. Anyway, the doctor, he saw me, and he came over and he had to go around these naked guys, get to me. Have you been in the hospital? Nope. Are you okay? Or, yeah. You haven't been sick? No. That's how skinny I was. Out of 200 people, he picked me, and then he went back to his station or whatever where all the football players, as they came through, bad knee, rejected, bad knee, rejected, bad knee, rejected, And then you went by, like, the way they did, a door, and somebody was behind the door, and the person said a number, 3. And when I saw him doing that, I thought, oh, I have bad hearing. And I thought, I'm going to listen real, because that wouldn't have made any difference. I thought, I'm going to listen real, And then I heard the number, and they wrote it down. So then I got a card, 1A. That means you're going to Vietnam, And so I went down to the recruiter, and he said, he says, everybody that's 1A, I get a copy. I'd be contacting you, but okay. And then I started going, and then as we're talking, he says, oh, okay, well, I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know that with the recruiter, a contract was a contract. You could make a deal. And I would have wanted to be in, which I think I would not want to be once I was, but, I wanted to be in the 101st Airborne Division or something like that, parachutes and that kind of stuff. And I think if I really got in that position, I'd have been on the airplane holding on to it. No, I'm not going out. But anyway, he said, I didn't know that you could, pick something, and it was, well, of course they had, if you pick something like, be a radio, repairman, if you couldn't repair a radio, it was a teacher, but if you couldn't do something, they wouldn't have to keep the bargain. But anyway, he said, well, the only thing we've got is teletype repair. I said, okay, put me down for teletype repair. And I said, I'm really pissed, 2 years ago or whatever it was, 3 years ago, I came down here and I was rejected because I was underweight, and and he said, well, you do look, like you're underweight. I was still. And he said, just a minute, and then he called over to the place where the physicals had been done, and they pulled up my card or whatever. I guess they almost never looked at, height and weight, And they said, we'll send him a new card. They sent me a 1Y card. And that meant they would only take you under emergency conditions. And that's kind of funny, because when Donald Trump's situation popped up and stories were written about him and things in the news, and why didn't he go to, his father paid a doctor to say that he had, bone spurs in his bone, I can't say it, in his feet or whatever. So then they mentioned in the news reporting, not exactly that one, but later on they mentioned that at such and such a date that the Selective Service did away with the it wasn't 4F, 1Y, was that? I can't remember. I just said it a while ago. And they did away with it and changed all those people over to 4F, so I really didn't think, but I didn't really want to be 4F, because that was kind of like 1, so I thought 1Y, but turns out same, so Trump and I both had our 1Y thing changed to 4F. Man, this naproxen did not work on my, it usually does work right away. Well, sometimes I take a nap. Anyway, I'm going to be sending this to Fred after I go through those other containers and see if I find any more information. Then I got to, if I don't find my son's birth certificate, then I'll have to, apply to get it from Missouri. He was born in Missouri. All 4 of our kids were born in Missouri. I come from a state that raises corn and cotton and cockleburrs and Democrats, and for all the eloquence neither convinces nor satisfies me. I'm from Missouri. You've got to show me. So, anyway, I don't think I'm going to be looking through any more things today. I think I'm going to try to lay down and sleep for a while. Thank you very much for watching. Oh, wait a minute. I got to mention this. No, I don't. It's about the terrible incident that happened where 5 black police officers beat a young black man that they arrested. And anyway, I'm not going to talk about it. And I told the ex-wife, she seems like she loves things like this. She doesn't love anybody being beat or hurt or police brutality, but she likes bad news, or she wants to know about bad news. And she talks about it all the time. And when they announced it a day or two ago that they were going to release the video, she couldn't wait to see the video. And I told her, I don't want to see the video. But then she sleeps in the dining room, and her TV, big TV, is in the dining room, which is right next to the kitchen. I mean, there's no door, so I went in to get a Brahms cheeseburger and warm it up, because I bought a bag of burgers today. And from there. And so she stopped, and I said, I don't want to watch the video. Oh, I don't want to watch the video. But anyway, I couldn't help it. I looked over, and I don't think that was even the worst part. They showed 2 or 3 of the 5 beating the guy, and, of course, it was totally uncalled for, 100%. There was no reason to do that. And, they were a special unit. Of course, they weren't the only special unit. There was other these special units. And supposedly, I think, like, they were supposed to be like the officers who made the most arrests, who were most, not aggressive, but who, got in there, responded to calls right away, all that kind of stuff. And it seems like whatever calculations they put together for these, they did it wrong, 100% wrong. And I saw on CNN, well, wait a minute here, let's say, that's all they have on CNN. He's talking about, the chief of police is let me, what they need. Well, these guys are going to go big time. I mean, of course, it's second-degree murder, but they're going to go to prison for a long time. But what they also need to do is, of course, they're going to study this, and there'll be studies by the federal government. Everybody else will, get into it. And they'll be doing studies to see what went wrong. But what you need to do right away is the chief of police That's his department. He's responsible. Fire him. And then, look at the chain of, look at the chain of command. You have assistant chiefs or whatever. You have probably an assistant, well, they probably have a bunch, but they have an assistant chief that's in charge of, the dispatch and maybe the vehicles, keeping them in, good condition. They have different, whatever. But just go down, find the chain, okay. And, or I guess you could go up. These guys were in this special unit. I don't see the name on the screen right now. Oh, Scorpion? Is it Scorpion unit? The Scorpion means something. I forget what they've spelled out. It sounds good, but you'll start with those guys. Okay, who was their sergeant? Of course, the sergeant may have been one of those 5, But anyway, move up. Okay, you mean you were the supervisor over these officers, and of course some others, I'm sure, Okay, what did you know? When did you know? I mean, basically, fire him. You go up, a lieutenant or whatever, fire him. You go up, and just work your way through, and you fire them. And you don't stop there. You have a training department. These guys go through some training, and you certify them, as they had, taken the training, and they had it down pat, and they knew, and you fire them, and just make it like a bloodbath. And the police department then is going to, you have to do it more than one time, and, this is what happens, if you want to make sure. And, if when these officers were going back, at the end of their shift each day, when they went back to they're changing clothes and whatever, and the other shift is coming on to replace them. And if you know, of the shift that's coming on, and there's a supervisor in, maybe a sergeant, maybe a lieutenant or whatever is in there, in there. If these guys had said in the past, man, we beat the crap out of this one guy today. Man, we had him crying or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Did that supervisor or supervisors, did they hear that? What did they do? And if they didn't do anything, fire them. I mean, fire people. These guys have a pension. They want to be police officers or whatever, and that's the thing. Of course, these guys need to go to prison. But these other guys need to be going to the unemployment office. And there should be a national registry of, I think people have talked about this before. If you work as a police officer someplace and you mess up, people make mistakes. So you have to, but if you shouldn't be able to, use excessive force or whatever, and you get fired or asked to, resign or whatever, and then you shouldn't be able to move on to another police department. Maybe it's debatable, maybe you didn't. Maybe you were black and it was a white police force, and, they come up with something, and so there should be some justice done where, but when somebody's fired, the agency should be notified. When somebody else is applying for a job, they pull up the thing, and if it says, fired by such and such police department, then talk to the person and do some type of investigation, or give the guy a chance, unless. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to hit the sack here pretty quick. I'm tired and hurting and whatever.